Hello. Um, I'm here tonight. I want to make this one quick because I don't want to stay in on this one much. I'm here to talk about Matrix Resurrections. Resurrections, whatever. I finally fucking watched it tonight. And, I gotta admit, I remember a lot of people talking about this movie before it came out, but since it's come out, I don't remember a lot of. I haven't noticed quite that many people talking about it, and certainly not at length. And now having watched it, I get why. It, it, this movie, the feeling this movie most evoked for me personally, I can't speak for other people, for me personally, the feeling that most got evoked for me from watching it was, who gives a shit? That's all I felt watching this movie. Like, I don't give a flying fuck about this movie. Who gives a shit? It's just like, who fucking cares? It's like they need to make new movies. They need to stop going back to this shit. And here's the thing, this movie is very self-aware. And that was part of the problem to me. Like, I can deal with a little bit of self-awareness, a little bit of winking and nudging at what's come before, with this type of shit, but it does it way too much, especially early on. And it's not even subtle about it. Like, I watched a movie earlier this week that was filled with a lot of subtlety in the way it approached things. And this movie was just like beating you over the head with its fucking messaging. Just in case you didn't know, this is the fourth Matrix movie. After the Matrix Reloaded, and Matrix Revolutions. And now it's Matrix Resurrections because it's bringing the franchise back from a rightful death. I mean, the way the last movie ended, it seemed like it should have been the conclusion. I mean, the main characters died, and yet somehow they're back. So, let's get into who these characters are. Okay. Well, of course, you have Keanu Reeves, who plays the main character, who in the Matrix is known as Thomas Anderson, but the name he takes for himself is Neo. He is the one who's this just guy who's he's sort of part of the programming of the Matrix, where he ends up with special powers that allow him to control the Matrix itself. Even though he somehow died and made a deal with the machines, he's now a part of the Matrix again and very much alive, and he's living the life of a game designer who runs a game company, and the Matrix is now viewed as a video game he created back in the day. And he also goes to therapy because he once had a mental breakdown where he couldn't tell the difference between reality and fantasy, and he believed the Matrix was real, so he thinks he's crazy. And he takes pills to treat himself, the blue pills. This movie focuses very heavily on the pills aspect again. Even more than the original movies did, they focus on the pills. Which is also kind of a wink and a nudge, because the whole red pill thing, the red pill, blue pill shit became such a big metaphor that's been, kept up throughout society over like the past 22 years, almost 23 years since this movie originally came out. It's so blatant. It was annoying. It just got on my nerves how blatant it was. And his partner in this video game company is a guy played by Jonathan Groff, who they never tell you. I forget if they mention what his name is, but they're sort of working together on the company, and he mentions how they don't really get along, and he tells him that they're owned by Warner Brothers, funny enough. Like I said, another wink and a nudge to, what's actually going on, and that they're being told that there's going to be a new sequel to The Matrix, and they have to make it whether they want to or not, which is another wink and a nudge to what's going on. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking here. And then you see a whole game development team meeting about where they talk about The Matrix and what came before, and people's feelings on it, and what they felt it represented and what they felt it needs. And they talk about does it need more violence? Does it need more more innovative special effects or things like that? And it's trivializing the whole thing and just breaking it down in its elements, and it shows that they don't really have a very great view of video games, which could be understandable, I could see, but it's just... The message is so blatant that it's kind of even hard to tell what exactly the message is. It's just like, are you criticizing your own work, or are you just criticizing what it's become, or are you criticizing the very concept of art being packaged and sold, and that there's no actually artistic value to it because it's just what it can be commercially broken down to? But anyways, in his life as Thomas Anderson, this game designer, he regularly attends therapy with a therapist played by Neil Patrick Harris. We'll get more into him later. Then he also keeps running into this woman. That woman is played by Carrie-Anne Moss, who in the original movies played Trinity, but her character in this movie is originally called Tiffany. And there seems to be some kind of weird connection between them, but she has a husband and a family, and it doesn't seem, even though he seems very into her, it doesn't seem like they're meant to be. While this is going on, you see this other part of the story where a woman played by Jessica Henwick, who's in the movie is called Bugs, as in Bugs Bunny, get it? Because White Rabbit, the rabbit that he followed. You get it, whatever. They actually play White Rabbit in the movie, because once again, like I said, beating you over the head with with everything. Everything is just a cudgel over your fucking head in this movie. Actually, the movie starts with her, basically they show you this scene that's very reminiscent of the beginning of the first movie, where the cops and the agents go after Trinity, and they go after a woman who looks like Trinity but isn't Trinity, and there's a bunch of agents, and one of them is referred to as Agent Smith, but he's a black guy. And Bugs ends up having a conversation with him and finding out that even though he's a program, an agent program, he's sort of like waking up and becoming self-aware and realizes he doesn't want to do this anymore. And he's now decided to take on the role of Morpheus. He's now decided to become the new Morpheus, even though he's a program. And it turns out that program is something called a modal. And it was created by Thomas Anderson as a design for his game. But it was actually a program he was designed to try to find something. It's weird. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but apparently, I guess this program, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen, is sort of a combination of Agent Smith and Morpheus, and he decides to just fully take on the role of Morpheus. He's originally in the role of Agent Smith, but then decides to take on the role of Morpheus, and basically he gets freed. They eventually free Thomas Anderson, make him realize that he's Neo and everything. And there's other, Jessica Henwick's character, Bugs, she's the captain of her ship. I forget the name of the ship. And she has a whole crew, but I don't remember a single character's name. These people are so fucking irrelevant. It's you don't fucking care. I can remember the characters from the original movie. I don't remember any of the characters from this beyond a handful. So they end up freeing him, but he knows that Trinity is also alive, and he's trying to figure out that even though it's been 60 years since he supposedly died, that he doesn't know how he's still alive or how he's still kind of young or youngish. I gotta admit, Keanu Reeves is looking kind of old in this movie. He's finally starting to look old. Or how, Trinity is alive too, because like I said, they both died at the end of the last movie. They take Neo to a new human city called it's not Zion, it's called Io, and it's being led by Jada Pinkett Smith's character Niobe, who is now significantly older, but you may remember her from the second and third movie. She now leads the city, and the city has been built by a combination of humans and machines. Because I guess after the original, after he made a deal with the machines the first time around, a bunch of people got freed, so they lost a lot of their power source. So because of that, the machines became, they had to deal with the scarcity of power, so they started fighting each other, and that led to some of the machines ending up, joining with humanity and waking up themselves, becoming independent, which is an interesting concept, which I wish they'd explored more, to see, to explore how much the programs had grown independent and things like that. There's more to explore in this story that they just kind of didn't touch on at all. So now, going back, there's issues in the city. Jada Pinkett Smith doesn't want them to go back to the Matrix. They want to go back to the Matrix to free Trinity, and there's a whole thing about that. But they end up doing it, and when they're back there, between when they left and between when they're back, we find out a few things. We find out, that this is a new version of the Matrix that got updated a while back, and because of that, they purged a lot of their flaws, including the so-called exile programs, the programs that stopped doing what they were supposed to do. So a lot of the exiles were purged, including the Oracle, whichever version of the Oracle you want to think of in your head. And the Matrix is no longer run. The Oracle, who was played by originally Gloria Foster and then later Mary Alice. And the Matrix is no longer run by the Architect, that old guy played by Helmut Bakaitis. The new person running the Matrix is, I guess after the war ended, a new program took over referred to as the Analyst, who is Neil Patrick Harris's character. When Neo tries to go back to get Trinity, it turns out his partner in the video game company, played by Jonathan Groff, is in fact the new version of Agent Smith. They never quite explain why Smith looks different, or maybe they did and I just forgot. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I guess it's just because Hugo Weaving didn't want to come back, so they got this new guy to play him, and he and Neo fight, and he brings a bunch of he brings a few of the exiles that actually managed to survive, but they look pretty ragged now, and they're being led by Lambert Wilson, who played the Merovingian in the second and third movie, and he's back again, though he's looking like a homeless person this time. And he shows up and he's mostly just yelling and screaming about how Neo ruined his life, and it's more fourth wall break, and he's just like yelling things about how, we used to do this and this. It's like, it's just more fourth wall, head over, cudgel over your head, weird messaging. I don't know, it was supposed to be some kind of reverse messaging about how, we like to talk about the past when things move forward. I don't know. It's all over the place here. It's so, I don't give a shit. So they fight, and Neo wins, and then he tries to go get Trinity, and that's when the analyst shows up, and he starts revealing a few things. He reveals that the reason Trinity and Neo are alive is because he had the idea to bring them back, and basically bring them back from the dead. Because he realized that with their power issues, that they would need a new power source, and he figured out that he could use the anomaly that Neo represents as the power source. And then when he did this, he also realized that Trinity was also part of the anomaly. Like, the two of them were sort of like, they always thought of it as the one, but actually they were the anomaly together. And that them coming together made them more powerful. Like, that's what triggered it. And so he realized that he needed to keep them close, but not too close, because if they got too close, they'd reach their full power and would be a danger to the Matrix. But if they were close enough, they would generate power that they could use to power the Matrix. And he also realized that the whole reason he became a psychiatrist was to keep him on edge the whole time, because he realized that if he kept him on edge, if he kept Neo on edge, it would actually allow him to generate more power to power the city, to power the machines. If that makes any sense. So this confrontation doesn't go well, and he has to abandon Trinity or Tiffany or whatever the fuck you want to call her. So then they go back to Io, and there's a fucking plan design. Niobe's pissed at them, but then they get approached by this other machine that wants to talk to Niobe and Neo, and it's a machine sent by what the fuck is her name, Priyanka Chopra's character, Sadi. It's the older version of Sadi. How a fucking program gets older, I don't know, but if you remember, in the end of the last movie, Sadi was what was referred to as the Last Exile, a child program that seemed to have some kind of weird abilities. And now she's grown up, and she says she has a plan to help them get Trinity out. It's some weird plan. All aspects of it don't exactly make any sense. It has some weird thing where they have to get Trinity's body out of the program, but they want to keep her mind in the Matrix. And it involves something about linking her with Jessica Henwick's character, Bugs, and I didn't quite understand the whole process of it. But what they plan to do is, basically, Neo's going to try to talk her to come out of the Matrix, but it has to be her decision. And so he makes a deal with the analyst to do just that. And it seems at first that it doesn't work, but then she kind of has this moment where she wakes up, and they have this thing now where instead of like agents taking over people like they used to in the last movies, what happens is they just have they have this thing called swarm mode, almost once again like referencing a video game, where all of a sudden people their eyes go like the weird black and green, like it's binary code, and they just start attacking like rabid rabid zombies or something like that, kind of like a swarm mode in a video game, which are not exactly my favorite modes, and it's just as uninteresting in this movie too. So anyways, there's like a bunch of cops there with the analyst and everything, and it looks like Neo makes a deal with him that if he can talk Trinity out of it, he and Trinity are leaving, and if Trinity agrees to stay, then he'll stay too. And it looks like he's about to stay too. Then Trinity changes her mind, and then a huge fight breaks out because they also brought a bunch of the members of the different crews. They showed like a bunch of the captains of the different ships show up, but like barely any of them are in the actual fucking Matrix. It was like 10 captains, and barely any of them showed up. Like, they show the people of they show the city of Io. They show barely any people in it. I remember in the other Matrix movies when they showed Zion, there was plenty of people around. In this one, there's like I think there's like 10 people at most. It's like, this doesn't look like a very populated city. I don't know what's going on here. It seems very dull. Maybe it's because of COVID. I don't know. Anyways, where was I? Oh yeah, a huge fight breaks out. Trinity and Neo like touch, and all of a sudden like it explodes. Like, he's just getting slowly more powerful as the movie goes, but you realize he's not quite as powerful as he once was. Maybe making a reference into aging, or how his whole thing just seems kind of tired. The whole concept of the white straight male protagonist, hero, savior, seems like a tired idea, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, the analyst has this way to like slow down time or stop time that affects even Neo. But while he's doing it during this fight, and he's planning on killing Trinity, all of a sudden Agent Smith just shows up, and just starts fighting him because he seems completely unaffected by what the Architect is doing, and the Architect seems genuinely scared of Smith. But he still gets shot by Smith eventually, and it's just he demonstrates that he's just taking over somebody else's body like he used to be able to do, and then he just disappears and we never see him again. Then another swarm mode gets activated all over the city they're in, and Trinity and Neo drive off, and the others get away, and nobody dies in this movie. There's like no payment for anything. And Trinity and Neo have this big fight, and Neo keeps demonstrating his powers to like move things around and stop bullets and shit, but he can't fly. And then he and Trinity jump off a building to get away from the people that are chasing them. And Neo can't fly, but Trinity can. Surprise, surprise. She's demonstrating her powers as the one. So they survive and they get out of the Matrix. And it's all just this weird love story between them. Like, that's the whole movie. And they go back and they confront the analyst at his house, and Trinity beats the shit out of him, and they just kind of reveal it's just like, no, we're gonna take over everything, and we're gonna remake everything now. And the analyst reveals, he's like, well, I guess he's running things, but he's not the one in charge. He's like, the suits make the decision, whoever they are. I guess it's supposed to be like a reference to like the producers of the movie or something. Like, well, why didn't they purge you? He's like, because I understand how people operate. He goes, the people want to be controlled. It's like, they're talking about how like Io doesn't really free people anymore, and how everybody wants to be under control. It's like a reference to like how everybody knows they're living in a bullshit world, but they just kind of feel safe in the bullshit world. Like, they're, I think they mentioned during one of the therapy sessions that like, people they desire more, but they're afraid of losing what they have, and which is very true, but it's, once again, cudgel over the head. And they just decide, like, no, we're not here to negotiate with you. We're just letting you know, like, we're gonna change things how we see fit. And they make a mention, it's like, we want to thank you though for like giving us another chance, giving us a chance to do this again, or something like that, or to do it right this time. And then they both just fly off together. Trinity and Neo, they both now have their powers, because I guess they're only powerful together or something. I don't know. This movie was dumb. It's like, I'm sure it's like, I just didn't even care what the messaging is. It was just dumb. It's like, I'm so sick of this shit. Just come up with new movies, man. Seriously, just come up with new movies. We don't need to keep going back to the same old shit. It's boring. This movie was boring. I don't give a fuck about anybody. I don't give a fuck about anything here. We don't need 20 fucking year old sequels. Or nearly 20-year-old sequels. I hope there isn't another Matrix movie. Or if there is, use new characters at least. That's something. You can explore worlds, but use new characters. You do new stuff. This is the shit that hurt like the fucking Star Wars sequels. Just too much return to the same old shit. Try new things. If you're gonna go back to the same worlds or same universe or whatever you're doing, fine. But try some new things. Shits get tired eventually. People get old. It's just, it doesn't work. It doesn't hit right anymore. Try some new shit. Explore new aspects of it. Let's expand our horizons a little bit, for real. This whole thing made a commentary about how people prefer their fantasies and their stories over reality. That's what people really want. And it's like, there's a truth to that, but it's like, I don't know, let's try harder. Because our entertainment is all we got, man. For most of us, it's literally all we got. We suck, and our lives suck. Is it so wrong that we just want to be entertained for a little bit? In between the hours and hours of sucking that is our lives? I'm going off on a tangent here. I'm not making any sense. I give the fucking Matrix Resurrections one thumb down. It's not good. It was not a good movie. I didn't like it. I hope they don't do more of it. I look forward to John Wick 4. I think that's what it is. That's at least more. Whatever. I'm going off track here. This was not a good movie. One thing it did succeed in is it made the previous sequels actually seem pretty good by comparison. So I guess that's one thing it did. It's like, these movies weren't that bad when compared to this. It's like, if you want to watch a good Matrix movie, go watch the first Matrix movie. That one still holds up. That was a badass fucking movie. It still holds up to this day. But other than that, they've just gotten worse and worse and worse. And this one continued the trend of getting worse. So, alright. That's it. I'm going to bed. Have a good one, folks. Good night. Okay, this one's going to be quick. This is just a little follow-up. I'm doing a follow-up because I made that original video on the night that I watched The Matrix Resurrections, and I'm making this because I realized I think I got a new rule that I'm not going to make the video the night I watch the movie. I want to give myself some time to think about it before I make these, because I'm already kind of just out of it and half asleep. Like, the whole thing is I'm too tired. So I should probably think about it a bit beforehand, because if I had, I would have come to a certain conclusion about this movie that I don't think I emphasized the first time I made the video. And I stand true that this movie was very blatant in what it was doing, in that there's like very little metaphor to it. In the original movies, the metaphor is about it's a very general message of revolution against oppression and enslavement, which can be interpreted many different ways. The metaphor is very broad and blatant. It's very broad, not blatant, it's very broad and left open to interpretation. This time around, it's very much clubbing you over the head with the whole message that the original revolution failed. Those who were fighting it eventually gave up on it, and that the revolution itself, the power of that revolution, was even co-opted by the people that they were revolting against, by their very enemies. And it's clear now that this movie was made blatantly, and even badly to some degree, intentionally. Like, it avoided the hyper violence of the original three, and it was just a different kind of movie. Although there was still some violence, but it wasn't as violent as those movies. I mean, the first movie had like a major shootout that they didn't have in this movie. There's not a lot of gunplay in this movie. A little bit, but not a lot. It didn't emphasize it the way the last one did. And the way the last ones did. And I do stand by that this movie is just not as good, but I do believe that it was intentionally made that way, because I think the Wachowskis were upset by how much the metaphor and message of their movie, the symbolism and the elements of the movie, were co-opted by people they outright despise. Like the whole pill thing, which is something they emphasize a lot in this movie, the blue pills and the red pills, and the whole concept of the pill, the taking the pill to define your reality, that is a message, that is a metaphor that has been co-opted by people they really, really fucking hate. And so I think this time around they're like, we're not going to leave the metaphor open to interpretation. We're going to beat you over the head with exactly what we fucking mean. And it makes for a pretty bad movie. But, like I said, I think they intentionally made a bad movie, because also with like the message that they, like with the early things they have where, they're talking about like making the new video game, and that's clearly, it's not even a metaphor for the movie. It's just clearly they're talking about the movie, that, this was a movie that was going to be made without them, that this was a thing that they created that was almost taken away from them. The power of it was taken away from them, and that kind of pissed them off, and they went back to do it begrudgingly, against their will, and I think they intentionally made it bad as sort of like a fuck you to everybody who, criticized the sequels, insisted they make this sequel whether they wanted to or not, and co-opted and fucked with the message of their original movies. I think it's a gigantic middle finger from the Wachowskis to everybody who ever pissed them off. That's what I see this movie as. So like I said, I still think it's a bad movie, but to think about it like that, I have a little bit more respect for it. I have a little bit more respect for people that took their artistic vision and made a multi-million-dollar movie. I mean, how much did Matrix Resurrections cost to make? Let's see. Matrix Resurrections. The Matrix Resurrections. What was the budget for this movie? It had a $190 million budget. A $190 million budget. And they made a $190 million fuck you to everyone they didn't fucking like. To just everyone who ever pissed them off and fucked with their vision in any way, shape, or form. Man, I got mad respect for that shit. Mad respect for that. So, yeah. So, The Matrix Resurrections, I still say it's a bad movie, but at the same time, I gotta give a big thumbs up to the Wachowskis for just finding their own way to spend a shit ton of money to stick it to everyone they don't like. good going. It's not like we needed another Matrix anyways. Honest to God, the only Matrix movie that's actually worth watching is the first one. So if you haven't seen it, just go watch that. It's the only one worth watching. Everything after that, it just becomes more and more utter dog shit. And this fits with that trend. So, yeah, okay. So, yeah. That's it. That's all I had to add to that. Alright. Nighty night.